You are one of the most popular top voice in the MENA region in fintech, tech, and crypto.
I discovered Bitcoin in 2013. There was really a lot of taboo against Bitcoin. If the bank knew that you held Bitcoin or you work for a Bitcoin company, they would immediately close your bank account. We have a moral duty to teach the next generation of talent. I find it unacceptable that we let students graduate out of universities today with no courses on crypto. Dubai has built in less than 3 years a proper global crypto hub, and I think this is a good example of when there's an opportunity, you build it and they will come. We're going to look back in 5-6 years to the interviews like this and say, my God, the industry was such in the early days.
Hello and welcome to Build It Up, where AI meets crypto, technology meets humanity, and East meets West. I'm Bill Chen, the co-founder of Cypher Capital. Subscribe now and be part of the conversation. Today, we have a very special guest, Henri Arslanian, one of the most influential voices in crypto and fintech. Henri is the co-founder of 9blocks Capital, a leading crypto hedge fund, and was previously PwC's global crypto leader. He is also the co-host of Crypto Weekly on CNBC Arabian, and an adjunct professor at the University of Hong Kong, where he has been teaching the world's first university crypto course since 2015. You have probably seen him on Bloomberg, CNBC, or the Wall Street Journal, break down the latest trends in digital assets. With years of experience at the intersection of traditional finance and crypto, Henri is also the author of best-selling books like The Book of Crypto. Henri, great to have you on the show.
Great. Thanks for having me on. Very excited to be to be here at Build It Up. I love the name, Bill, by the way.
Thank you. Yeah. I think you are one of the most, popular top voice in the MENA region in fintech, tech, and crypto. Can you share with us a little bit, like how you get into the fintech and crypto in past, 10 years?
Yeah, absolutely. First of all, thanks for having me. Very excited to be here. So the quick story here, I was born in Montreal, Canada, the beautiful French part of Canada. I have an Armenian background from Armenia originally. And basically, after I became a lawyer, I was very fortunate to be very good at school. And I left for China, actually. I went to China, I learned Chinese, I did a degree in Chinese law. And then I moved to...
That is an exchange program or just a master?
Fully, yeah. I was working as a lawyer in Canada. And one day I saw a documentary on TV, on Canadian TV called The Rise of the Chinese Dragon. And I remember I turned to my dad, I said, I'm going to go to China. There's going to be tons of opportunities. Everybody laughed at me. This was 2005, 2006. It was before the Olympics. But I went and I bought a book called Chinese for Dummies. So I did a whole degree in Chinese law for 1 year. It was a great time. I really enjoyed my time in China. And I had to come back in Canada to finish. In Canada, you have to do a 6 months mandatory internship to become a lawyer. And then the day was done, the next day I left for Hong Kong, where I started working as a financial markets and hedge fund lawyer. And in the investment bank, my job was to help basically hedge funds raise money and become best in class. And that was great. And that's where I really discovered fintech and crypto. I discovered Bitcoin in 2013.
Wow.
I organized...
So below $100, $200?
I don't remember the price, but I remember that it was a couple of months. My first event I organized was in January 2014. It was 2-3 months before Mt. Gox.
Oh, wow.
So I used to be the chair of the Financial Services Committee at the Canadian Chamber of Commerce, and I organized this Bitcoin event, and I still have the flyer for it. And the Canadian Chamber got a lot of complaints saying, what is Henri Arslanian doing about this money laundering event? At the time, this was the Silk Road era and everything else that was going on. So that's where really I discovered Bitcoin, and I got very curious about it. And I remember there was one day when I was working at UBS on the trading floor, and I remember I used to think to myself, why do we need all these hundreds of highly paid people? It makes no sense. And I was there at the first ever fintech event in Hong Kong at the time. And I remember I had to take a day off from the bank to go to this event. And that's where I realized, I really need to change and focus on this specifically. There was a moment that I really was a catalyst for me. At investment banks, they have these big town halls. And at the time, the CEO of UBS was in this big town hall in the UBS offices in Hong Kong. And I remember I asked the question and I said, I really believe that our competitors are not Morgan Stanley. They're not Goldman Sachs. Our competitors are going to be the Chinese tech firms, are going to be technologies like Bitcoin coming in. And this is how these technologies will come and disrupt our business. And everybody laughed at me. And one of the managing directors that I had at the time, I was very young, sent me an email and said, Henry, never ask stupid questions like these because it's going to ruin your career.
Actually, you interpret the competition by the disruptor instead of the direct competitor, right?
Exactly. At a time, it's important to understand that these Chinese tech firms were not in it. I mean, they were not very involved in financial services yet, you know, but there was really the beginning happening. It was only Chinese phenomenon at a time. And that's obviously, now the rest is history. We all know how things evolved. But I was very fortunate. I played a big role. I was the first president of the chairman, of the FinTech Association of Hong Kong. I was very fortunate to play a big role in the growth of the ecosystem. I started teaching it. I teach the world's first crypto university course in 2015 at the University of Hong Kong. I was very grateful the university let me teach that course from back in the day. It took a lot of courage. But really what I focused on was I left UBS in 2015, and PwC at the time, I went to them with a one-page business plan. I said, I want to launch a crypto team. I believe the crypto industry will grow. And the crypto industry at this stage of the evolution, will need a lot of services.
I think it's very common for a traditional finance guy to get into the fintech and show for fintech, but not very often, a fintech guy from a traditional finance like UBS will show for the crypto as early as 2014, 2015. So how did you make that transition? Like, what is a catalyst to enlighten you?
Good question, Bill. And at the time, you're right. It was the very early days of Bitcoin. I still remember when I had to buy my first Bitcoin, I had to wire. And I remember it was Kraken at the time. I had to wire to a Japanese bank account they had. It was very early days. At the time, you could buy Bitcoin. You had to go to this ATM machine in Hong Kong. There was one company called ANX, which then became OSL, which is now listed. That was pretty much the only place people were buying it from. But it was very tricky because there was really a lot of taboo against Bitcoin. To give you an example, at the time, Bill, if the bank knew that you held Bitcoin or you worked for a Bitcoin company, they would immediately close your bank account. HSBC in Hong Kong closed so many bank accounts. They literally forced a bankruptcy of so many Bitcoin and crypto startups over the years. I hope one day we'll look back at this, but it was very, very taboo.
So that was 2014?
I would say especially 2014, 15, 16, so many companies and founders were getting their bank accounts closed to the point that, there was a whole black market of bank accounts. People would go set up bank accounts and then sell them to crypto companies so they can operate for a couple months until those accounts got closed as well. So this went on for a while. I don't know, the part that really I found very interesting with Bitcoin at the time was really the empowering element and the decentralized element. Did I know that it was going to be so successful? I didn't. I still remember when Silk Road happened, I thought Bitcoin was dead. I said, at the time, Silk Road was anywhere from 70 to 90% of global volumes. I said, you know what? It's too bad. This was a good experiment. It's too bad it didn't work. And at the time, it's maybe tough for people to understand now, but I still remember the first time a company would accept Bitcoin. And it would be a massive piece of news for us. It would be, wow, this company is accepting Bitcoin. Wow. There was a lot of moments like that at that era. I think it's also important for people to understand now the role that Hong Kong played in the role of the global crypto ecosystem.
Especially in the early stage.
In the very early days, I don't know what happened in Hong Kong.
It's like a Silicon Valley.
Literally, that's because, you had a mix of the Chinese entrepreneurship, the Chinese creativity, the Hong Kong financial center knowledge, the global hub that Hong Kong had. If you think many of the companies we know today, from Crypto.com to Block One to Tether, BitMEX, the perpetual swap was invented in Hong Kong.
Yes.
So many of these companies were invented there. I often reflect about what was it that made it. And I don't know the answer. But I remember, for example, when I went to PwC, we worked on the first ICO. And at the time, I was advocating that.
Oh, really? I saw PwC was very, conservative. Even you initiate that, team.
Yeah, they were very. I have to say, when I went to PwC, to the credit to the PwC partnership at the time, I went with that business plan and I said I want to build a crypto team. And the best thing I ever done at PwC is before I started taking the first client, I went to train the risk team. So I went and sat down with a risk team. The head of risk was a very smart guy at the time. I went and sat down with him and I explained to him what is Bitcoin, what is an ICO, what is a token. And to their credit, the risk team really spent the time to understand the asset class. And like anything else, once you understand it, you're not worried about it. And that's how we started. And we started working on the first ICO at a time. And the services we were offering were very simple. Sometimes it was basic compliance advice. It was tax advice. It was, valuation work. It was like, I was a big advocate at a time of KYC AML in the crypto space. I still remember at one of the first ICO conferences in Hong Kong, it was in Citibank Tower, where I went on stage and I said ICOs should do KYC and AML to ensure that the bad actors don't get into the space. And I remember the audience started booing me. And people were like, get off the stage. And
It's because most of the audience are very degen.
they were, I don't think even the term degen existed at the time, but they were very opposed to it. But I told
Okay.
them for crypto to go from 1.0 to 1.1, we need some basic compliance at that stage of the evolution.
Yeah.
So they were very early days at that era. So I think the ICO boom, but PwC at the end, we had a team really only in a couple of years where we had over 400 people in 25 countries working on crypto.
Oh, wow.
It was a globally over $100 million business. So there was a need for professional services. And because we were the only one, it was quite interesting.
Yeah. But now is the big four, they open for the audit service already, or most of them are still not yet?
To the best of my knowledge, I left now, it's been a couple of years, but it's still very difficult to get
Still
audit
very,
services.
okay. But
A
for
lot of
other
the big
advisories you're doing?
For advisory work, tax work, legal work, compliance work, where there's lower risk, of course, these firms are very happy to support. The problem is when you're doing actually crypto audit, traditional financial audit. By the way, the term audit is often thrown around, but there's various definitions about audit. Often it's when crypto firms talk about audit, they talk about basically standards that are agreed upon, right? And it's agreed upon procedures that people will agree upon, and the big four will verify upon those procedures. But financial audits are still very tricky because as much as we want, and of course it's all on chain, it's all available publicly, they need to fit that circle into that square of the guidance and the standards of standard setters for
Yeah,
audit
that's the most hardcore part, right?
Correct. And it's quite difficult as well. But I really believe that I'm very impressed with how professional services firms have evolved in the last couple of years, whether it's lawyers, whether it's big consulting firms, but whether it's the big four, in providing services to the crypto industry. And I think this is something that the crypto industry needs and deserves as well.
Yeah. And after that, I know you went beyond the advisory service to set up your own hedge fund.
Correct. Yeah. And the way that happened was because I was a hedge fund lawyer by practice, by background, if you want, I really believed that there was going to be a future in crypto asset management. And in the course, even of my PwC meetings that I was having with various investors, everybody would tell me the same problem. They would tell me, Henry, we're going to start with VC investments, but then we're not going to buy Bitcoin on our balance sheet right now. It's too early. Think about family offices, to sovereign wealth funds or pension funds. It was way too early. And they all told me, Henry, we're going to invest via fund managers or fund of funds. But we have a problem. We're not able to find institutional grade fund managers. Everybody we meet is like two guys in a basement smoking joints, punting crypto. There was no risk management, no controls, no security. And they told me, Henry, you know hedge funds pretty well. My first book was even how to launch a hedge fund. By then, I had to work that 60, 70 hedge fund launches globally. And you know crypto reasonably well as well. Why don't you do something? And at the time, I partnered with the guys at Nine Mast, which is a hedge fund, traditional hedge fund that's been around for over 10 years. They're a $1 billion plus hedge fund. And we came together with the idea of building an institutional grade digital asset manager that will deliver consistent, risk adjusted returns to investors, but at the same time operates with the global standards, whether it's being regulated, compliance, governance, insurance, risk management, everything that an institutional investor would need, that also institutional would go through institutional due diligence, institutional investment due diligence, and operational due diligence without any issue. And we went on the journey to build that.
Awesome. I have a question regarding that. In past 10 years, there are some entrepreneur who chose a very hustle approach. They chose to become a pirate and then getting a license to become a Navy, like OKX and Binance. And also there are some other, you guys, want to be regulated in the very beginning. But I think, to some sense, you have to sacrifice a little bit of the development speed as a, sort of a trade-off. What is your view on that?
Yeah, it's a very good point. So when we launched the hedge fund from day one, we wanted to be institutional and regulated. because the customer base we were targeting, the investor base, that's what they wanted.
You don't want to be a hustle for some period of time to make enough money and then get regulated.
I would say when we launched the hedge fund in 2021, 2022, the industry had matured quite a bit. Where I think you're right, Bill, was earlier on. So I published recently a post on LinkedIn about my 10 years in crypto and 10 lessons that I learned in 10 years in crypto. In 2017, 18, even 19, I would meet with many CEOs of crypto exchanges. And my advice to them was make sure to be regulated, make sure you're doing everything by the book. And in hindsight, I was probably wrong, because what happened, some exchanges went and did everything by the book. And in many cases, not only it slowed down their evolution, in many cases, it completely killed their business, because the regulators didn't move fast enough and they really put constraints on their business. Other exchanges, like many of them, the ones you named, went on completely in the gray area and then came back to the space. If I had to go back now to that era, I would say that probably an era that you operate not too much in the black area, but in the gray area, where let's say you ask for forgiveness, was probably right in 2017, 18, 19. When we launched the fund, it was obviously later on where I think we could do from day one, it can be regulated. For example, 9 Blocks became the first crypto hedge fund to be regulated by VARA. It's still the first and only crypto hedge fund. But that era from 2017, 19, I think that you're right, Bill. Probably the right thing to do for many founders was to operate in the gray area. To be fair to the industry, we didn't really know by then. I mean, again, it's difficult for people now to understand, but at the time, there were no regulations. For example, even us, the FinTech Association, we got together and we put together guidelines for token issuances. And companies, out of goodwill, would follow and respect these rules. Because there was nothing concrete at a time that was available.
Yeah. And also, I have a question that, you have done so many hedge fund strategy. In the end, why neutral? What does it mean to institutional investors?
Yeah, good question. So what you'll see is a lot of allocators, especially now, they want their directional exposure. And what I tell them is go buy IBIT, go buy your ETF. There's a lot of great listed stocks of Bitcoin companies, or buy Bitcoin directly. But many of them, they like market neutral strategies because it gives you pure alpha, gives you the alpha of digital assets without the directional exposure. In our case, for example, we have a market neutral strategy. We do a lot of funding arbitrage, basis arbitrage, a lot of statistical arbitrage strategies, where as long as you believe in inefficient markets, and God knows there's a lot of that in crypto, we make money basically trading these inefficiencies. And these are actually strategies that are very common in TradFi. So let's say in the funding arbitrage that we do, where at the most basic level, we'll go short a perp and we'll hedge it with spot. Those types of trading has existed in TradFi for many years. It's just that we adapted for crypto markets. So a lot of these allocators are very familiar with the strategy, and they look at it, they're like, wow, this makes a lot of sense. And the returns are very attractive for the risk that we're taking. That's why, for example, we've been generating on an annualized basis over 20% with a Sharpe of 2.6 now for multiple years.
The S&P 500 is not comparable.
Yeah, of course, but there is always risk. I mean, there's always risk in crypto. The biggest risk you take with a market neutral strategy is counterparty risk. Is the risk that one of your exchanges you're trading with will go bust. It happened with FTX, for example. Of course, now the industry is much more solid than it was 2-3 years ago. Not only we do due diligence on exchanges, not only we have counterparty exchange limits on how much we can have on each exchange, but there's also now a lot of third-party custody solutions where your part of your assets sit on these custodians and not directly on the exchange. And on top of all these reasons, being VARA licensed as well gives us the benefits that a lot of our counterparties are also VARA licensed, and they need by law to segregate their assets in the UAE. So when investors look at this and they say, okay, we're getting these 20 to 30% net returns a year, our biggest risk is counterparty risk, but that risk is significantly mitigated. This makes it a very attractive investment for now.
Yeah. How do you feel, to become the first hedge fund crypto licensing VARA? Does it consume a lot of efforts?
So I'm a big fan of VARA. I think the Dubai government and the UAE in general were very smart in realizing there was a gap in the market, that the crypto industry wanted to rules by which they can operate with, and actually they created those rules. And VARA is a great example of that, being the world's first crypto specialized regulator. I think one people often don't realize is being licensed with VARA is very difficult. Our own application of our hedge fund had 108 appendices, but also the ongoing reporting. We have weekly reporting with the regulators. We have monthly financials. Some firms may say, oh, that's a lot of headache. We don't want to deal with it. We believe that actually that is good because for investors want that. They want that oversight. They want to know the firms have complied with, are providing this kind of information. And I think this is why I believe the industry, the investor base right now, the institutional investor base is looking for some kind of regulatory clarity and regulatory oversight on VARA licensed firms. I think that's the reason VARA is so successful. VARA today has allegedly over 850 applications. So in any way you look at it, Dubai has now become the global hub. I mean, to give you a very practical example, Bill, I'm 1 minute walk away from most of my counterparties. 1 minute walk away. And that is incredible. In Dubai, in One Central, where our offices are. So it's quite incredible. You know, Dubai has built in less than 3 years a proper global crypto hub. And I think this is a good example of when there's an opportunity, you build it and they will come.
Yeah, and I know a lot of your counterparty also licensed in VARA, right? Like Binance, Bybit, etc.
Exactly. So that's the beauty of it, right? So imagine we are licensed by VARA. Most of our counterparties are also VARA licensed. And that gives also a lot of protection to investors because they know that, okay, the ecosystem is well regulated. Everybody is next to each other as well. So I'm a big fan. I think for the current evolution of the industry, having proper regulatory oversight by regulators who understand the space is very important. There's, having regulators who don't understand the space regulate crypto companies actually just causes more work for lawyers, compliance professionals, doesn't make the industry more secure. I sometimes say that the good thing with VARA is they know what they're doing. The bad thing with VARA, they know what they're doing. So the fact that you have a regulator that understands the space makes it easier, not only for licensees, but also for the regulator, but also safer for the investor allocator base as well.
Exactly. And I believe, along the way, you also help the regulator to evolve their regulation sophistication.
What I found very impressive with VARA, and all the credit goes to them, was from day one, they said, we are regulating a fast-growing space. We will make mistakes, but we're all in this together. And I really admire the fact that regulators can come to you very openly and say, there will be some mistakes that we will make, but we're regulating a fast-growing industry, and that's how it goes, and we're happy and this is how we're going to do it. And I find that's very admirable, actually, that I think many regulators around the world would have not had the courage to do what Dubai did with VARA. And I think as an industry, we have to be grateful for the work that VARA and Dubai has done.
Not every regulator is, open and fast learning and humble, right?
And also, I think what's a lot of people don't understand globally, when you look at the UAE, why the UAE has become a big global hub, is if you're a crypto native firm, VARA is perfect. If you want to do TradFi and crypto, ADGM in Abu Dhabi is perfect. If you're a TradFi asset manager, you want to go into crypto, the IFC is perfect. If you're a DAO and you want to get into decentralized, you want to launch a DAO, Rak DAO in Ras Al Khaimah is perfect. So this entire ecosystem makes it a 1 + 1 = 3 ecosystem where there's really every emirate has its niche. And as a crypto company, I truly believe the UAE now is the best place to run a crypto business.
Exactly. I have another question regarding the investors. If we talk about the adoption of the investors who invest in the market neutral quant fund in crypto, I guess, in the very beginning, it's a high net worth and then family office, financial institution, and maybe in the future is sovereign wealth fund. So where are we at this stage?
So we are still in the crypto hedge fund industry in the very early days of the evolution. To put things in perspective today, the total AUM of crypto hedge funds is less than $5 billion.
That's nothing.
Exactly. By contrast, the total AUM of TradFi hedge funds is 5 trillion. So even if the crypto hedge fund industry grows 10x, it still becomes only 100 of the traditional hedge fund industry. And I'm not even talking about the asset manager industry, which is 10 times bigger. So we are at the very, very early days of the crypto hedge fund industry. Today, the investors in crypto hedge funds are mainly high net worth individuals, are mainly fund of funds, crypto fund of funds, and family offices. Where I'm seeing the evolution already happen, we're seeing more and more some of the larger family offices enter the space. some of the private banks enter the space for their high net worth clients. And gradually, we're going to see it grow towards foundations, endowments, pension funds. And I think we still have a while to go before we hit sovereign wealth funds for crypto hedge funds for one very simple reason as well, size. For example, when you look at a fund like 9Blocks Master Fund, our main fund is over $175 million now, and we are one of the biggest market-neutral crypto hedge funds in the world. In traditional finance, we would be even too small for even any serious prime broker to consider us. So I think there's a lot of growth in the crypto hedge fund space. I truly believe that we're going to look back in 5-6 years to the interviews like this and say, my God, the industry was such in the early days. And this is why I think the ecosystem, people are building businesses to service this industry, will benefit over the next couple of years as the industry continues to grow, in the same way that those who build businesses to service the crypto industry more broadly grew as the industry continued to grow over the last couple of years.
Yeah, I think it's like, there's another example, Blackstone. When Blackstone set up the first private equity fund, it's so small, right? But now, this asset class has become double-digit trillion asset class, and Blackstone become a $1 trillion AUM manager.
Absolutely. But, on the other hand, sometimes I wonder, let's say I meet investors. Let's say I meet a family office, and they tell me, Henri, our goal is to deliver high single-digit returns, and they're very happy with that. I mean, if as a crypto hedge fund, if we delivered high single digits, we'll be out of business the next day. So, I mean, we returned last year 38% net with a Sharpe of 2.6. So when we sometimes go to investors, we tell them, okay, we're going to do, let's say 20-30% a year. They look at that and they're like, I mean, it looks even sometimes too good to be true.
Yeah.
And for them, they don't understand. But I think we have to, as a crypto industry, and I think you and I, Bill, we've been in the space for a long time. You have to empathize with a lot of allocators as well, because first of all, allocators have a lot of choices, from private equity, VC, equities, global. I mean, there's so many things to invest in. We come with crypto, and for 99% of the population, they don't understand crypto. And to their defense, when you look at the media, you hear about hacks, you hear about North Korea, you hear about this and that. It's not a very easy industry to understand. There's a lot of negative media on it. And for them, often there's a career risk, especially when I see a lot of family offices where people have been there for 10, 15, 20 years. It's
You mean
like
for the
job.
professionals, right?
Exactly. There's not much personal upside. Even if they put $100 million in your fund, and you double the UM, it's maybe a couple basis points of their return at the end of the day. But the career risk is quite high if something happens. So I think there's a lot of that element. I truly believe, but for FTX, of course, the industry would have gone faster than what it is now. But now we're still recovering. To give you an idea, every single investor meeting that I have, all of them, the question of counterparty risk always comes. How are you dealing with counterparty risk? How can I be sure that another FTX will not happen? How do you know that Binance will going to be here in a couple of years? So these questions they're asking are actually very valid questions. And I think we need to do a better job educating them. I think one problem as a crypto ecosystem, and including the crypto hedge fund industry, I think we need to do a better job at educating the investor base. Often now, if you think about crypto or in the Bitcoin ecosystem, we have a lot of terms like HODL or DGENs, you're doing that. We have our own ecosystem, we have our own language in a way. And when somebody from outside looks at this, it's a bit scary, it's a bit intimidating. So for them, that's why I think we need to do a better job in educating not only our crypto fanatics or, the crypto aficionados, but also the investor public and the public at large. And I think once we do a good job there, everybody would benefit more holistically.
Regarding the education, I think you are doing a phenomenal job, as a top voice on LinkedIn. You're also a, bestseller author, etc. Could you talk about what is your motivation and strategy behind that?
Yeah, so I've been teaching crypto classes since 2015. So when I started at University of Hong Kong, teaching the first crypto university course. At a time, I would teach crypto. At the time it was only Bitcoin. I mean, Ethereum was not even live yet. I mean, to put things in perspective, we used to refer as a Bitcoin blockchain. I mean, it was really early days, to the point that I had to teach about fintech as well to be able to cover my 36 hours. Because at a time it was only proof of work, it was only Bitcoin, there wasn't much happening. There was no layer 2, there was no Lightning Network, there was no DeFi, there were no stable coins, nothing existed. So it was the early days of really Bitcoin at a time. I'm a big believer in educating people on the digital assets. So I do this by multiple ways. I obviously I teach at University of Hong Kong, where I'm a professor. I published multiple books. I've been thankfully all been bestsellers. I can create a lot of content on social media. I have over 500,000 followers on LinkedIn, for example. I have 50.
Sorry, so you gradually go from offline to online.
Yeah, exactly.
From writing to video.
Yeah, it's interesting. I've been starting doing videos on LinkedIn since 2016. At the time, it's important to understand short form video was not a thing yet. I mean, Douyin at TikTok was invented in 2017, 18. So I started doing that before it became a thing. And we can talk about that if you want later, but like basically it was really LinkedIn. I still believe people want to consume educational content. And then, of course, now that has grown. I have a TV show now on CNBC Arabia that is seen by 60 million people each week, a couple million on social media. But I really believe education is very important. I recently published a kids book, actually. Here we go. This is a copy of my kids book that just came out recently. That also became a #1 bestseller globally for 3 months on kids books on money. I really believe that we have people like you, like me, Bill, who are in the industry. We have a moral duty to teach the next generation of talent. For me, I find it unacceptable that we let students graduate out of universities today with no courses on crypto. While this is an industry that will have a material impact on their future, I find it incredible that we're having kids in primary schools and high schools and we're not teaching them about Bitcoin, whereas this technology and this asset class will be part of their life for the rest of their lives. So that's why I think the kids book was very important for me. And I really believe in education, including podcasts like the one you're doing. I think it's very, very important. And we have this duty, people like us in the ecosystem, for those who are interested, by the way, if they want to learn more, we should make it accessible to them to learn more.
Yeah. And for the kids book, how do you find the difference? Read a book to the kids as compared to read a book to the adults?
It's definitely more difficult. So I've had 3 books for adults before, including one called The Future of Finance, which was a bestseller, and the Book of Crypto, which also was a top 5 global bestseller. When the Book of Crypto came out, I got 200-300 messages from followers saying, Henri, I want to teach my kids. What's the best way I can teach my daughter, my son? So I was thinking about it for a while. And then I have myself an 8-year-old daughter that now she's 8. At the time she was way younger, that she used to go to school and tell her friends that my dad is the CEO of Bitcoin. That's why I realized, okay, I need to fix this. And that's how we started doing the kids book with Decoding Crypto. It took us about 3 years to put together. It was way more difficult than we thought. First of all, for kids book, it needs to be funny. You need superheroes. It has to rhyme. It has to be cool. Whereas for adults, you don't have those problems. So in Decoding Crypto, for example, you have my buddy Hodler. I have 2 characters called Naka and Moto. There's a female hero called Solidity. And the book rhymes. It's cool. There's QR codes kids can scan. So you have to make it actually quite fun and funny. That's one thing I realized for kids is very difficult. Also, how you present to them. The Decoding Crypto initially was supposed to be called Crypto for Kids. And we interviewed about 200 parents and educators. And the #1 feedback we were getting was that age group of 8 to 12 does not want to be called kids. So I had to change the title, actually, everything else on that perspective.
So you collect the feedback along the way, right? Even before the publishing.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, one thing we didn't want is that we didn't want kids to think, I'm going to go gamble and, put money on this meme coin or on this shit coin or this altcoin. Actually, in the book, we have a character called the Crypto Millionaire. And what we talk about is that being a crypto millionaire is not having the bing bling and the big money, is actually being educated about digital assets. It's understanding Web3. And we spend a lot of time on that topic to ensure that the way we see people who are the crypto millionaires, it's not the bling bling, but it's actually the people who are educated to understand the space. And that was very, very important for us as well.
Yeah, you're very savvy at, article writing, podcasts and the short video, etc. What do you see all those different formats of the contents? If there are some young generation founder who want to initiate their the media strategy, what would be your advice to them?
I've been talking a lot about this over the last couple of years. The way I started was in 2016. I mean, it's a good, interesting story. I was at PwC at a time, and I went to our marketing team, and I told them, I want to start doing, I believe the future is short form videos. And they laughed at me. I remember at a time, we had a division of a strategy division called Strategy End.
That is before TikTok.
It is before TikTok. TikTok didn't exist. This was before Douyin, before TikTok, before everything, before Shorts, before, So I started, and my goal was I believe the future was short form video. And somebody from PwC came to me and told me, Henry, we believe that CEOs want to read in-depth reports that go in the bottom of topics. My message to them was, I don't know what CEO you speak to, but I know no CEO that has time to read 20, 25-page reports. So basically, PwC refused to cover the cost of my video production. So what happened is I started filming my own videos on my iPhone. My little sister at the time started doing my editing, and we started with the crypto capsule. And my idea was that on LinkedIn, my idea was first that if I'm not able to explain a topic in 60 seconds, it's too long. So I have to focus it in. And I started LinkedIn because at the time, I believed that the only platform that you can open at the office without being ashamed was LinkedIn, because YouTube was often banned in banks. Instagram, TikTok didn't exist. Instagram, I'm not even sure existed. But it was really, at a time, it was the only platform that you can open at your office and not be ashamed, and you can watch it. And that was very contrarian at the time, because LinkedIn, as anybody who's done social media knows, is always a couple of years behind other social media platforms. When I was doing videos on LinkedIn, nobody was doing videos on LinkedIn. So really, I started like that. I was one of the first ones to start posting videos on LinkedIn. And it was very difficult, Bill.
Difficult in terms of?
Difficult in creating content and getting traction. So I would go, at the time in Hong Kong, I had rented a desk in a shared office space on the weekend. I would work the entire weekend, Saturday and Sunday, on creating content, articles and videos. I would post them on Monday, nobody. I would get zero traction. But next weekend, I would come back, write articles, post videos, post them on Monday, no traction. Third weekend, I would do the same thing. And literally, I did this for about 9 months.
But what makes you to be so persistent?
Because I really believe there was demand for it. And about a couple months in, about 9 months in, I started hitting the hockey stick, and then it really took off. Right now, for example, my crypto capsule, last time LinkedIn was sharing data, was like the #1 finance show on LinkedIn. My podcast, my newsletter has over 60,000 newsletters subscribers, with the open rate is over 60%. And what I believe is, I really believe the future is micro-influencers. I believe that all of us, each one of us, we are our own media company. When somebody at the PwC would often come to me, they would say, Henry, we're giving this contract to you at KPMG, or Henry, to you at BCG. But I'd be, no, I'm a PwC partner. I'm not a BCG partner or a KPMG. They're like, yeah, whatever. We're giving it to you. And I really believe that we are our own brand. And anybody, any entrepreneur, any founder,
not only founder, but every professional. Okay.
I really believe that a couple of things will happen in the next couple of years. One of them is the future belongs to micro-influencers.
What is the definition of micro?
So you have people like Kim Kardashian and others that have a couple 100 million followers, right? But you also have people that have only a couple thousand. For example, let's say you're into kids book or you're into watches. There's a group of audience that really cares about that niche topic. So you can have an audience of, let's say, 5,000 people, 10,000 people. But the people that care deeply about your topic, that is a very powerful market. For example, if I talk about microphones, there's people that before they buy a microphone, they're going to watch videos of microphones, follow it, know what the trends are. And if you are a trusted voice in that micro community of microphones aficionados, you have that is worth a lot of money. So I really believe where we're going to see the future of marketing and the future of business is people gravitate towards micro-influencers that they trust. For me, for example, my micro community was the institutional world of crypto. In the early days of crypto, people were doing YouTube videos and videos. It was Lambo going to the moon. They were pumping shit coins, and I always refused to do this. If there's one piece of advice I have to anybody listening, is that you have to be your own brand. You have to have your own content. You have to express your own opinions on social media, and it's never been easier. I remember the first ever consensus. It was 2016 or 17 in New York. I went and I started doing interviews with crypto CEOs. And at the time, I had to hire a crew. And I still remember it cost $5,000 at a time in New York. This is we're talking almost 8-9 years ago in New York, to have a crew for half a day or a whole day at consensus to do his interviews. This was basic camera and microphone. Now, I film all my content myself using my iPhone and a microphone that I bought on Amazon. So the cost of creating content has gone down significantly. I would even argue a lot of people, they love content that is natural, that actually is not perfect, because they love the fact that it's authentic, it's coming from you. And I think there's a market for both. So obviously I create a lot of content on my own using my iPhone, but I also have my show on CNBC that is watched by 60 million people each week that has a proper production. It's in studio. It's always top notch. I think so there's horses for courses, but I really believe everybody should create content. And I think people often underestimate how valuable is their point of view. For example, Bill, let's say you have great point of view on what's happening in the VC space, what's happening in the Bitcoin space, what's happening now in the Middle East space, what's happening between the Asia and Middle East, what's happening in the Asian ecosystem for the Middle East audience, for example. Like everybody has a point of view that others are interested in hearing. And the big thing is also what I call the silent majority. People may post videos. I know I post my videos. 99% of people will never interact. They will never like my videos. They will never share it, but they're watching it. And that is, I think, what people underestimate. People often let go of social media saying it's not getting any traction. In reality, it is. And that's why I'm very happy to see that some of the new platforms like TikTok, for example, where it's not follower-based, but it's views-based, where the algorithm will push it to the people that actually want to use your content. So I'm very, very optimistic on this topic. Really, everybody should create content. You are your own media company, and the future belongs to micro-influencers, especially in topics that are complicated, where there's a lot of noise, but where your point of view matters and people want to hear it.
I have a last question regarding this is, your first advice is go for it. Prioritize this. Every professional have to be your own chief marketing officer. Second question would be, what would be your, sort of a strategy advice to them? Like, prioritize a video or prioritize a LinkedIn in general? What would be your advice?
So first of all, I think you should create content. And every people are worried that they're not perfect. Just create content. I'm the best example. When you look at my first videos, I knew nothing about recording. And I remember my first ever crypto capsule I recorded at noon in Hong Kong because I figured, the sun is up, it's going to be more light. I mean, this is exactly what you shouldn't be doing, but I didn't know better, right? And now I learned, okay, there's better hours when there's golden light and stuff to record. I didn't know about it. So you learn about these things. Even for me, for example, there's a lot of words. My kids make fun of me. Like, for example, English was my third language. I learned Armenian first, and I learned French, and I learned English. There's a lot of words that I cannot pronounce as well. As your listeners are probably realizing, I don't pronounce my words pretty well. I speak very quickly, and there's words that I really cannot say. For example, 1 to 3, I cannot say 3. I don't know why. I don't know. I've always been like this. Everybody makes fun of me, but there's literally words that I'm not able to pronounce. I have no idea why. But despite this, it never stopped me from creating content. People actually relate to that. Nobody's perfect. So my advice is, of course, create content. If it's not perfect, just do it. It's never been easier to create content than it is now. Now, the second question is, how do you create it? I personally am a big believer in video. Let's say, if you go on LinkedIn, videos will get, depending on the data source you're looking at, anywhere from 1.4 to 1.6 times more views than text, for example.
Even you wrote so many books, you still, sort of prefer the video in the future. Okay.
Because I think a lot of people are lazy. Unfortunately or fortunately, people are getting used to consuming TikTok, Instagram. I always say that my competition to my content is not people reading about finance. It's people doing stupid videos on TikTok. It's like girls in bikinis on Instagram. It's people doing funny jokes on YouTube. So that's my competition. I'm competing for audience, my listeners' time, often when they're off work and they want to relax. So this is why the big challenge is I highly recommend videos, but you need to make it insightful, fun, but very concise. I think there's a market for long-form content like this podcast, for example, where people are driving, going to the gym, they're listening to long-form content. But there's also a big market for short-form content. And because that if you're not able to deliver content in 20, 30, 40, 50 seconds, you're not going to be able to do it in 1 hour, right? And what I think a lot of people don't realize is creating 60-second content is more difficult than creating 60 minutes content.
Concise is difficult.
Concise is very, very difficult. Yeah. But I think all the platforms now are very exciting. I think YouTube is here to stay long-term, has a lot of value as a repository of content. I'm a big fan of LinkedIn personally, because I believe it's the only platform that people use their real name. People often pay for it. And it's the only platform that really people will always keep along the way because it has their professional images. everybody is self-aware. Everybody cares the most about themselves, and everybody cares about the LinkedIn profile. So that's why I think LinkedIn is here to stay. Does LinkedIn need to do a better job? Absolutely. I've been the first one. I've been very critical of LinkedIn over the years. I think LinkedIn's acquisition by Microsoft destroyed the innovation of LinkedIn. LinkedIn is years behind any other platform for sure. But there's no competitor yet, right? So it's a bit like the US as a superpower. There's no competition. In professional geared social media, LinkedIn is the leader right now. And I think it's going to be the leader for some time. But if there's really, I cannot emphasize it enough, how important it is to create content for people. It's been very interesting for me over the years as well, where even investors in my fund now come to me and they're like, I want to invest for you because I discovered Bitcoin thanks to you in 2018, 19. And I think people also...
That's a silent majority.
I really believe when I meet people in their 20s and 30s, if you're spending the weekend, you're partying, you're going on hikes, you're chilling on the beach, you're doing something wrong. If you're in your 20s right now and you're spending your weekend watching stupid Netflix documentaries, watching stupid back-to-back YouTube videos or TikTok videos, you are wasting your time. You should spend that time instead either getting some degrees and stuff you can do, or working on companies and startups, or creating content. That is the most valuable time you have. And I find it's very sad that a lot of people waste that time just chilling out, when that's a time where you can really build your personal equity that is worth a lot of money moving forward.
Thank you for the advice. So basically, for the young generation, don't consume the short video. Create the high quality short video.
Exactly. I mean, I meet, when I every time I teach at university, at the end of each course, I put a chair in the middle of the classroom, and all my students have been in my class know this. And I tell them, the most important thing is to be sitting at the edge of your seat. The world will change, new technologies will come, new industries will come, but you need to always be at the edge of your seat. You need to be a paranoid optimist. I tell us, it's the Armenian immigrant mindset. You always need to be a paranoid optimist and look at what are the trends coming in. And when you're young, you have the amazing ability that you have the energy and you have the time. Often you don't have the money, but later in life you'll have the money, you'll have the time, but you won't have the energy. So it's always this trifecta that you don't have, the trio elements. But if you're young, it's a great time now to create content. It needs to be, you don't need to appeal to a big market. As long as you have a niche audience that cares about it, that's all you need. I'll give you a very good example. I'm a big collector I have a very nerdy hobby outside of crypto. I love old corporate bonds, share certificates. I love share certificates of companies that have gone bankrupt, from Blockbuster to Kodak. I just bought Trump Hotels, for example. And then I love old corporate bonds. When there was little coupons that people would clip. These are, especially, I love corporate bonds. I love Armenian corporate bonds from the pre-Ottoman era. So in the world, I don't know, but there's maximum couple thousand people that collect bonds. It's a very niche market. I must be for sure one of the youngest people doing this, but it's a very nerdy hobby. But whenever there's a newsletter that comes out every 3 or 6 months from this association that is made for corporate bonds, I swear I read it end to end. I'm so excited about it. When there's an auction, I will go to the auction and look at what bonds are available. But that is a very niche market. If somebody created content for that niche audience, maybe we're 5,000 people around the world, and the niche that I collect, which is this Armenian thematic of bond, maybe there's 20 people, 25 people, but the audience really cares about it. So I think that's what that's a micro community.
You should run a side channel for this.
Maybe I should do that, actually. I should start doing that, I think, on the side. But it's, and you'll be surprised. And often it doesn't need to be linked to what you do. Like, everybody is passionate, often when I organize dinners, I ask people, like, what is the one thing people don't know about you? And everybody's passionate about something. It could be watches. It could be, a certain comic book. It can be certain music. Like, I'm sure, Bill, you have a passion, something. And when you can talk about that for hours, right? So I think as long as people have a passion and you share it, people love that. Like, I love Bitcoin. I love crypto. I love sharing it. I'm genuinely passionate about it. And I think that shows off when you do the videos. People appreciate that passion that you have. For example, what is the one thing you're passionate about, Bill? Like, what is one thing? You must have something you're passionate.
I really like the biography.
Here we go.
Yeah.
So the biographies, for example, there's a whole, like, I listen to podcasts of people analyzing biographies because I think I love biographies, like, by the way, as well. And I think there's a whole market of people that love biographies. And so that's a niche culture on its own already, right? It's so interesting, right?
Awesome. Cool. Well, thank you. Thank you for the insightful sharing, and really appreciate it.
Thank you, Bill. Thank you for being with us, and thank you for having this podcast. I think it's great what you guys have been doing with Brother Cypher as well, what you have been doing personally as a space as well. And I think your contribution, not only to the Middle East, but also the broader crypto ecosystem has been great. And thank you for everything you've done. And thanks for having me on the show, for allowing me to share my passion of crypto with your followers.
And definitely we will clip the high quality short video on LinkedIn and we share with you.
That's the way to do it. Thank you.
Okay, awesome. Well, that's all for today on Build It Up. We will be back next week with another inspiring guest. Subscribe now so you will never miss our amazing interviews. Until next time, this is Bill Chen. Goodbye and take care.